We all love Harry Potter, and if you don't, well then you're fucking lying to yourself, mate. Harry Potter is one of those stories that pretty much everyone knows like the back of their hands. And only a small group of ignorant, masochistic individuals exist in this world who haven't either read, watched, or heard about Harry Potter. For most of us, Harry Potter and all the media that has been inspired by this magical series helped define our childhoods. There's just so much to love about Harry Potter, from the insanely detailed world built by J.K. Rowling to the plethora of exceptionally written characters to the intricate plot points that J.K. Rowling has crafted. It was really only a matter of time before I made a video on Harry Potter. Now, I love the books arguably even more than the films, which is the only time I'll probably ever say that. But since this is a film channel, I'll be discussing the movies. In particular, one of them. Harry Potter to me is one of those timeless series that never gets old, no matter how old you get or how many times you've rewatched them. However, one thing I've noticed ever since I began learning more about film as a creative study is that the Harry Potter movies are a different breed of movie. Most of them focus on the wonders and magic of the sensations that this world gives people, and it relies so heavily on people's nostalgia for the series. To me, these movies don't feel like real movies because they are something more, so I don't really rank them as movies, except for one, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. This is the movie that I personally think is the best Harry Potter movie of the whole bunch, as it's such a stylistically mature and emotional film that focuses heavily on characters, themes, and other filmatic techniques. It's a movie that I personally appreciate the most out of all the Harry Potter movies. And I'll tell you why. However, as always, I'll start off with the negatives, because no movie's perfect and all movies can be criticized if you look for it. Now, this first one actually relates to the other movies, but Ginny and Harry's relationship is just not convincing. Actually, Ginny's character is just not the same as in the books. And it's one of my biggest complaints about the movies in general. And especially in this one, since all the other characters are done so brilliantly in this movie. But Ginny is not. When they finally reunite again, Harry barely looks like he cares. They don't even hug. And their kiss, and the pie scene, and no. I don't like the relationship in the movies at all. Another thing is that I love how in the Ministry, Yaxley keeps up with the gang who's sprinting while he's just casually strolling. It's always something that bothered me. Occasionally, the direction in specific scenes is very awkward, like at times it feels like the actors just don't know what to do after there's been a line. There'll be like 3 seconds of them just looking awkwardly at each other before the next line comes, and it just feels off. However, I don't really have much criticism for this movie. I think it's a very solid film. And yeah, maybe my bias towards Harry Potter is playing a part in my lack of criticism. But yeah, many of the problems are just a problem with Harry Potter in general. So without further ado, let's discuss why Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 is the best Harry Potter movie, in my opinion. I think one of the best parts of this movie, and what really sets it apart from the others in giving it this mature tone, is how it deals with death. Now, death is very common throughout this series, even before this installment. However, I think this one deals with it the best. So yeah, I'm gonna talk about death. Actually, let's be more fancy about it. So the first major death this movie deals with is Dumbledore. Now, I know he dies in Half-Blood Prince, so it's not technically this movie, but this is where we truly feel the impact of it. Up until this point, Harry has always been safe, to a certain extent. I know there's been Voldemort and dragons and shit, but he's always had Dumbledore there to save him if he needed it. In the Philosopher's Stone, during the final confrontation with Voldemort, they're still in Hogwarts, so Dumbledore isn't far away. After the graveyard, when Voldemort comes back, Harry eventually returns back to the protection of Dumbledore. Heck, in Order of the Phoenix, Dumbledore literally fights Voldemort to protect Harry. Yes, there have been many moments of insane tensions and scenarios where Harry has been in a lot of danger, but Dumbledore has always been there. He's always protected Harry, but not anymore. The opening scene in this movie is just the characters realizing this. Harry realizes that he truly has no one to guide him anymore. His greatest protector right now is himself. And yes, even though he's older now, that's still a big leap to take for a 17-year-old. The fact that the most evil Dark Lord of all time and his army of loyal goons are trying to murder Harry, and all he has is Ron and Hermione, is so fucking intense. And the reactions to this dilemma is perfect. This movie is just Harry and the gang having to grow into their own persons now, having to rely on themselves instead of others. And that's fucking real. Think back to when you first moved out, or the thought of having to do so. It's scary, right? It's hard having to suddenly take care of yourself in an unfriendly world. And these kids have to do this, but to the extreme. At least we weren't fucking being chased by vicious psychopaths. I just think the lack of security that Dumbledore's death brings to the main characters is so powerful, and it makes for a really deep film. Then we have Hedwig's death, which is just heartbreaking. Because this innocent animal that has loved Harry unconditionally since he was 11 is murdered like it's nothing. He doesn't even get to say goodbye to her. It's this selfless sacrifice that Harry doesn't want. He doesn't want people dying just for him, but yet they are. It's a part of life that people you love die, and it's certainly not a concept that Harry isn't familiar with. He's never been lucky when it comes to his loved ones dying, but it's never been this blunt, so sudden, so innocent, so instantaneous with no goodbye. It works well to push his development further. Mad Eye's death shows Harry how much bigger than him this battle is. Harry is, as we know, very heroic and selfish, and he doesn't want people dying for him. But that's the thing. Mad Eye didn't die for him. These people aren't dying for him. They're dying for peace and security, to rid the world of evil. Harry is just the vital instrument in this battle, but everyone is fighting for the same reason. Harry having to come to terms with people dying for him is absolutely purposeful and deep, because what the fuck kind of shit is that for a 17-year-old to go through? These deaths just go so far to building Harry's character. However, by far the saddest death in this movie is the death of Dobby, the only character in this whole series who has always been completely pure of heart and unwavering in their love for people. And he gets stabbed through the chest, which is fucking emotional. This little creature that Harry has never really seen as a friend, more of like a helpful resource and ally, giving his life for Harry in the most selfless way possible, really opens up Harry's eyes to the impact he's had on people. This little boy who's always been abused and mistreated throughout his whole childhood, now has people dying for him because they love him. Also, Harry's reaction when he desperately calls for Hermione to help is heartbreaking. Throughout the entire series, Hermione has always been able to help Harry out of most situations, but not this time. Harry can only watch as this little creature dies saying his own name. This movie just gets to me, man. It's just death upon death upon death, and all this perfectly sets up the tone and atmosphere of the movie. That being desperation. Death is just so well executed in this movie. Now, a common problem with the Harry Potter film series is essentially one of the biggest limitations of book adaptations. Things will get cut. And since being fantasy books, Harry Potter does have a lot of plot and things that happen, and this works a bit better in the books because there's time for both character development and the plot. However, in most of the movies, a lot of character work is omitted to rather focus on the story being told, which is not necessarily a bad thing because the Harry Potter story being told is fucking brilliant. However, since the 7th book got split in two, and the first half of the book being mainly camping anyways, it was a lot easier for the writers to give a little more focus on developing Harry, Ron, and Hermione's characters, which is one of the reasons that this movie is so damn good. Let's start with Harry. So we've already talked quite a bit about Harry and his journey of having to find his own path, and step up to this role without the guidance of Dumbledore. The first part of this movie is just Harry being confused, and why wouldn't he? He's always had Dumbledore there to guide him, but now he's learning all these secrets about Dumbledore, which makes Harry question his own relationship with Dumbledore. This leads him to doubt the mission, doubt himself, doubt the war, and of course it's understandable because no one has ever told him anything. He's always been in the dark, but before, everyone else knew the things, so at least he knew he'd be alright. But now it's just him. Everyone is relying on him, everyone thinks he knows all the answers. They're relying on his leadership and knowledge, but he doesn't know anything. All this confusion and doubt is a perfect representation of maturing and the struggles that come with it. This is the film where Harry, in my eyes, feels more like he does in the books. We can actually see what he's thinking and feeling, and most of the time, it's intense. Hermione's character in this film is also about maturity and coming of age. The first thing she does is wipe the memory of her parents, signaling the end of their protective care of her. She's on her own now, with only the skills she's worked her whole life to perfect, but now the stakes are just higher. She's always been the smart and logical one in the gang, always being in control of most situations. However, now she's not. She's helpless when being tortured by Bellatrix. She's helpless when Dobby is dying. One of my favorite scenes of Hermione's is when the Snatcher can smell her perfume. Her perfume, which is something so casual, something so normal, something that keeps her attached to her past self. But even that brings her in danger now. Hermione having to let go of security and grow into a woman is really inspiring, and most of all relatable. Hermione has done good service in this movie. However, Ron is arguably the most developed character in this whole film. In the past installations, we've seen Ron's struggles with Harry's population and his own poorness. But in this film, we see the underlying insecurities of Ron's character, not being loved. Ron's mother really wanted a daughter, and Ron was the 6th boy before the eventual girl, which has always given Ron a sense of being the least loved, which of course isn't true, but it dictates a lot of Ron's emotions. He's always had to live up to his older brothers like Charlie and Bill. Fred and George always had each other, and they always bullied Ron. And Ginny could do no wrong. Ron always felt like the outcast in his own family, but then he had Harry and Hermione, friends who loved him like equals. Until of course he wears the Horcrux that opens up the deepest caverns of his mind. The fear that Hermione, the girl he loves, actually loves his best friend instead, kills him inside. It causes him to lose control, lose sight of the mission, and he abandons his friends who he has always been so loyal to. This movie really shows Ron as a deep emotional character, that is overall an amazing person and friend, but who is so heavily dictated by his insecurities that he sometimes gets lost in them. Ron has done so much justice in this movie. He really has a lot of time to shine, which isn't always the case in Harry Potter movies. It's a deep and critical look into Ron's character and teaches us important lessons about the impact our underlying issues and insecurities can have on us. The main characters are just phenomenal in this movie. But even some of the minor characters in this film demonstrate real themes as well. like xenophilia's love good, and the impact that desperation can have on even the bravest of people. Even once Voldemort had gained power, he still openly supported Harry, but then the Death Eaters took away Luna and everything changed. Xenophilius didn't turn evil, he just became desperate. And to me, at least, it's heartbreaking how oppression can corrupt and twist morally kind and genuine people. It's deep. The characters in this film are just deep. And to me, this gives the movie a much more mature and thought-provoking feeling than any of the others, which is why I love it so much. To end off with, I just want to point out a few more details that are just lovely. The visuals in this film are absolutely stunning and beautiful. Some may see the matted colors as boring or lifeless, but no, it fits the mood and atmosphere perfectly. Of course, this movie looks darker than the rest. There's no glorious Hogwarts. There are no flashy wizard battles. It's just raw and real. However, that's not to say the visuals in this movie are just standard and lifeless. Oh no. There are some beautiful shots of the landscapes, the lighting is always on point, and the animation for the story of the three brothers is majestic and stunning. The music is really subtle in this movie, which is actually a really good thing. Harry Potter is known for the stellar music, as it has a lot of very recognizable themes such as Hedwig's theme and Courtyard Apocalypse. This movie doesn't really have any of the obvious ones, but if you actually think about it, the score in this movie is really good. It's somber, it's moody, it's depressing, but it's also powerful and inspirational when it needs to be. Like I mentioned in my last video, music is one of the most vital aspects of any movie, as it's crucial in making us feel the emotions that the movie is intended to make us feel. The music in this film is just stunning, and I love it. Call me old-fashioned, but I really like the world building in this film. Now, one of the main components of Harry Potter is of course the world. It's pretty much a separate character, but people always see the first couple of movies as the world building ones, because yes, they introduced us to all the magic. But I think this movie brings a whole new level of world building, from the things like wizard weddings and Ministry of Magic pamphlet makers, to the change in politics and social life that Voldemort's rule brings over the world. It's a shadow of gloom and dread that affects everyone, and it just creates this serious tone of horror. Because yeah, this movie is just so much more intense and violent than any of the ones before. Like yeah, Cedric and Dumbledore dying was serious and horrible. It just doesn't live up to the shit that happens in this movie. Hedwig and Mad Eye get killed off like it's nothing. We see this fully realized racist and oppressive society that Voldemort is creating, in which discrimination and murder is accepted. Ron almost gets his arm ripped off, and we see that gruesome injury. Harry almost drowns alone in a dark and cold pond. Ron is constantly listening to the radio, praying not to hear the news of the death of his family. And Harry and Hermione even consider staying in the forest because of how shit and twisted the world has become. And if that isn't good enough, well then Hermione getting tortured should seal the deal. This film is just so deep and depressing, and it handles some very real and mature themes extraordinarily well. And of course, it's not all doom and gloom. There are lighter, more heartfelt moments like Hermione and Harry dancing. But these moments only have such a resonant impact because there's such a stark contrast from the shadow that covers this film. As a film lover, this movie is exceptional, and since I'm so invested in Harry Potter, I love this film even more. It's definitely not boring and unneeded like a lot of people think. It's a deep and thoughtful movie that plays with your emotions in the best way possible. Go give it a rewatch, and hopefully I've given you some insight into why I believe Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 is one of the absolute best Harry Potter movies of the entire series. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this rant on Harry Potter. I have a lot more time to make videos now due to the quarantine, so if there's anything in particular you want to see from me, then be sure to tell me down in the comments. There are a lot of different style of videos I want to make but can't really, due to the limitations put on society right now. Basically, I left all my resources in Kenya. Anyways, like and subscribe for more like this, and I'll see you all later. Peace out.